Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd. Chris Boyd is a certified financial planner practitioner and senior vice president and financial advisor at Wealth Enhancement Group, one of the nation's largest registered investment advisors. We call it Something More because we'd like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients on Cape Cod and across the country. Here's your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being with us for another episode of Something More with Chris Boyd. I'm here with Jeff Perry. We are both of the AMR team with Wealth Enhancement Group, and happy to have you with us again. If you are just joining us for the first time, know that we welcome your calls, your questions, the mailbag, as you guys did recently. We'd love to hear from you if you would like to reach out. AMR-info@wealthenhancement.com. Toll free, 866-771-8901. If you have your own personal questions, we're happy to do a consultation as well. Today, we are talking about some of the biggest unexpected challenges that people face in retirement. Jeff, you had come across a really good article in Kiplinger, which Kiplinger is really a good quality magazine.
It is.
Finance. That's probably something worth promoting if people are looking for just a good publication. Kiplinger's been consistent over the years of having good stuff.
Decades and decades. I don't know how long it's been, but they're facing all the challenges that the magazine industry is facing, right?
True. Yeah.
The cost of delivering a magazine to people is not inexpensive, and so the size of our magazines is going down, and they're all transitioning. But I have always found them to be
it's kind of taken over Money Magazine's role, right? But
Money Magazine.
To your point.
No, absolutely. I think Money Magazine's gone from publication, aren't they?
Yeah. It's just a only web. But sorry, I interrupted. You were saying they've been quality for a long time.
Quality for a long time, a little bit above the basic. Money was kind of the basics. But still, they're writing for the masses, as we talk about sometimes. But I don't see a bias in their writing. They seem to be open-minded to different topics and subjects and opinions. So that's a good suggestion if people are looking for a publication.
Yeah, lots of good articles that are, they've got the flashy headlines at times, but it tends to, everyone's got to have a hook, right? But at the same time, it's good financial content, I think, for sound personal finance strategies and so forth.
Yep.
Keep you informed. Well, in any case, a good article from that. You want to set things up, talk about this, or do you want me to? What do you want to do?
Well, it inspired me because we do formal, comprehensive financial planning for our clients, meaning we really dig down to their assets, their cash flows, their expenses, their goals, their dreams, their risks, not just their risks from being underinvested or the risks of being overinvested, but the risk of things that they don't even think about, right? So, and I have seen in my own experience with friends, neighbors, and certainly see it with clients, is when people get ready to retire or they're thinking about their retirement, and you ask them, like, so what do you spend every year? They have a handle on it. Some people have an exact number, and I worry about those people a little bit. Like, I'm just kidding. But,
you're impressed by it. I know.
I am impressed by it. No, but most people, when you talk to them, they go through, they start thinking, what do I pay every month, right? And they know maybe they have a mortgage, maybe they have rent, they know they have property taxes, they know they have utilities, car payments, car repairs, whatever. They know they have food, which is a big one for people now. And they kind of come up with a number, and it's almost always too low because they forget things. But even more riskier to their long-term success of their plan is the things that don't come up frequently, the things that change in retirement, and they either don't attribute an appropriate dollar amount, or they just miss it altogether. And this article talks about the stealth things that can really destroy your cash flow in retirement. And so I thought it was, since we see it almost every day.
There are plenty of them, right? There are just things that you maybe underestimate
Mhm.
or maybe just don't think about until there's
Right.
a cost.
The first one on the list is one that I think we see from people all the time, especially people that we know very well and they get older. Is healthcare costs. So even if you retire and you have Medicare and a good supplement, or you have a good company plan if you retired early, and you think like, okay, I usually spend a couple $1,000s a year on my non covered medical things. But the older that you get, the more this healthcare cost creeps up, and things that you didn't even forecast. We have some good
Yeah,
friends, um,
yeah.
and they're not that old. They're older than us, but they're not that old, and they're just going through this period of expensive dental work.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah,
Hearing aids and dental implants.
right,
These are like big things that kind of seem to crop up at a certain age that hadn't been an issue before that.
right. Everybody has a dental trip. Some people might have gone to the dentist today that are listening. I don't know, but
I just came from a dental cleaning yesterday.
yeah,
Is what
yeah.
Jeff is giving me a hard time.
And whether or not you have dental insurance, it's usually maybe one thing happens a year, and you go in, and it just as you get older, that filling, that cavity, that one crown that fell off, that you need another one.
Right, right,
And you can kind of handle it. It's a couple $1,000.
right. And then all
They
right,
start to
you need a
multiply.
root canal, then.
Hmm.
But when you talk about these posts and implants and
Bridges and
it gets really expensive.
yeah. So the number one.
Hearing aids is another thing that I've run into where, maybe it's a certain age range that clients start to face this as a need,
It's legitimate. Yeah.
but apparently they can be quite costly too. And that's an example of an unexpected, a stealth
Hmm.
expense related to healthcare. Could be other things like actual like deductibles and co-pays with a hospital stay or something like that, more severe.
Yeah.
Do we include late in life, like long-term care kind of related expenses as well?
I think we should, because I was referencing the financial plan and things that people forget, but one of the things that we do with our clients is, even when we get all the data right, we believe we have it right.
Yeah,
We start to talk about what ifs, and we stress test the plan for what ifs. And
yeah.
the big one, there's a lot of them, but the big one that comes up that most people really haven't contemplated. Might know it might happen to somebody else, but they really can't process that it could happen to them as a long-term care event.
Yeah, yeah, and the costs associated with that, even if you're talking at home,
Mhm.
like we don't, it doesn't have to be like a nursing home stay necessarily.
Right.
Maybe it's just the need for extra care at home and the having people come in more regularly for
Mhm.
various considerations. That can really have an additional cost that's beyond your regular cash flow plan.
Even if it's not a permanent thing, you could have an injury or an illness where you're convalescing at home, but you may need a few months of extra help, and that's very expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Um,
I would add just, when you're talking about stress testing, we can come back if there's more you want to talk about the healthcare component. But I think that's clearly one that comes up and can be pretty significant and pretty dramatic when unexpected. And this article talked about, what was it, 43%? What was that 43% about? That people are having stress,
mhm.
and the unexpected costs create a lot of stress for them in retirement. Um, but in any case, I think the one thing that you talked about that we do often stress test for is inflation.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that's, I think, more on people's minds the last year or two because of 2022. We had that big run up in inflation temporarily, and the Fed's drastic, effort to try to rein in inflation, that hit some of our listeners, I'm sure, with an awareness of, that this is something I've got to plan for. We usually have seen, we've been kind of spoiled over the last 20 years plus, maybe.
Right.
Even in a low inflationary environment with maybe 2% inflation or even lower as the norm. I think if we were, when I started in the industry in the 90s, we used to talk about long-term inflation as 3.5%.
Right.
And maybe 3% over a shorter period of time. Now you get to where we've been 2% for a long time. The Fed's goal is 2%, but whether they're going to be able to achieve that, and I've talked about this before, but going from an environment where we were increasing our free trade and exporting arguably jobs, but the manufacturing costs to lower expense locations,
Sure,
was helping to keep inflation low. As we look to reverse that pretty dramatically with the trade policies that are proposed, trying to bring more of that activity back to our shores, that will probably raise costs, and that could show up in the form of inflation. So we may need to start thinking about a higher inflation assumption. Something we should probably think about. We kind of been using 2.5% as a number of late over the years, and then we stress test for 3.5% or something. But might be time to revisit that.
probably is. You're right to note that the inflation spike after COVID, after the government, all the government spending and everything that, really in the supply chain stuff, it got people's attention.
Yeah,
which is good. Good that it got their attention. Not good that it happened.
Right.
But it points out a longer stealth risk to a financial plan is for those individuals who are doing their own planning and saying, okay, I spend $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year. Right now I bring in 70. I'm good. I have extra cash. But if you don't include that inflation factor and to your most recent point, the correct inflation factor, and you're going to be in retirement 20 or 30 years,
it's kind of amazing.
Think about how much things cost 20 or 30 years ago. And so 20 from 30 years from now, you're purchasing a new car, or you're just buying your weekly groceries, or you're doing a home repair. If you haven't factored that cumulative effect of 2 or 3% a year into your cash flow projections, you're going to have a struggle more than likely at the end of your life, when it's supposed to be the easiest time.
I used to do these seminars, and we'd start off with, when we talk about inflation, we'd say, all right, how many people today came in a car that cost more than their first house?
Well, the hands go up, right?
And at that time, almost everybody's hand would go up, you know. And I don't know if that's still the case, but
maybe for some of our older clients. But if you're buying a car today at $50,000, which is crazy, right?
Right.
20 years from now, it's going to be 6 digits.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Yeah. So, well, all right. So inflation, you got to be planning for. Healthcare costs, we got to be planning for. You just mentioned the idea of home repairs and maintenance. I think that's something we don't always include in our budget. We tend to say, well, what's it cost for the, what do you spend? And you kind of say, well, yeah, I had to do that.
One time though.
That was it was a one-off. Yeah, exactly. And the roof, I won't need that for 20 years or whatever. But, then there's renovations, then there's, new appliances or whatever. And it's not every year. It's not all the time. But
it's almost every year something.
There's something maybe.
Yeah.
but as far as like either to include it in the budget as a
Mm-hmm.
either annually or maybe every few years there's a outlay of some note, um, or to just say, hey, I expect we're going to want to renovate the kitchen, the bathroom, some other major house expense periodically. We should plan for that as part of our plan in the mix. I don't think most people do that. Do you?
No, I don't think most people do. And sadly, I've seen lately a few folks I know who are mortgage free and in retirement, and
Mhm.
they're doing fine. And something comes up, and they just don't have the assets, the liquid assets, and then they go back to a home equity, and now they have, it solves their problem, for that new roof or that big repair, right? But now
Mm.
they have a payment which wasn't projected in their cash flow.
Mm.
So I love the idea of, talking about it in a financial plan, but also planning for it with the form of a bucket or a silo of money,
Yep. Yep.
dedicated for emergencies generally is fine.
Yep.
But having that reserve that if the AC heating unit goes out and it's $10,000, that you're not running to the bank to get a loan, or you're not going without. Some people, we see these stories that people, especially in the Northeast, where people couldn't fix their furnace and nobody knows, and they're just
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to get through. So having that liquidity bucket that you can handle a couple of these things without chaos.
Yeah. I think it's challenging sometimes to plan for things. Things tend to come up at the wrong time. You talk about that furnace, or oh, I know I need this, $10,000 expense, but I'm going to put it off or whatever. And then how do you plan for the timing of that in a way that is more manageable, less disruptive? If it's something where you're taking it from investments and the market's down, it's bad
Right.
timing, right?
Right.
So yeah, just well, anyway, that's one of those things I think is perpetually challenging, just as a planning concern.
It's definitely challenging, and I'm hoping, with this conversation that we're having, is people can consider this before they need it.
Yeah.
When I'm going to attribute the quote to the wrong person, so I'm not going to attribute it to anyone. It's just not mine. I haven't had an emergency since I've had an emergency fund,
Yeah.
because it's not an emergency anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's
It's just
the point.
okay. I don't want to spend 10 grand today, but I can and I have to. So, if you're approaching retirement and you're thinking about your plan, or you're in early stages of retirement, and you have some ability to put some money away, this is something that you should do. We're not asking you to give up the money. We're just
Yeah.
asking you to segregate it, perhaps.
Well, to your point, I mean, one of the things that sometimes people recommend is to have 1 to 2% of your home's value planned annually for repairs and
Mhm.
maintenance and that kind of possibility.
Right. Oh,
That-
good.
yeah, go ahead.
Good financial planning in business. You take part of your earnings and retain them, retained earnings,
Mhm.
for future needs. That could be, cash flow pressures, or it could be growth or opportunities, or it's just, we're talking about stealth things that can erode your retirement. And
Yeah,
certainly an unexpected repair. Well, we're calling them unexpected, but if you retire and you're,
you should expect some. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we're
That's a good point.
encouraged.
And, to similarly, we've talked about this before as well. One of the solutions here can be sometimes maybe it makes sense to downsize or relocate, or
Mhm.
maybe you upgrade to a newer place that
Right.
doesn't have as many of those kinds of needs, but you can um, limit some of the challenges you might face if you do that relocation. You know what I mean?
Hey, we owned a house that was 140 years old
Yeah,
in downtown Sandwich.
I bet that
Beau-
always had costs
a
associated.
beautiful home, but we were clear, when we bought it, that we bought it in 2011, I think, that when we retired, we did not want to live in that home, because the potential for repairs on an older home is just even more difficult to predict.
Can be a drain.
And serious repairs,
Yeah. Hey, let's go back one more too, just to the healthcare. How do people deal with that? What are some suggestions they might, think about how to manage those costs? I mean, one possibility is, evaluate whether long-term care insurance is an appropriate tool for you. It's expensive at times, and sometimes can be an absolute cost. Sometimes people think in terms of a sinking fund, that just they have sort of a segregated funds allocated with that expense in mind. You're an advocate of that, right, Jeff?
Absolutely.
And then, maybe there's other things, like if your work plan allows for a HSA, maybe you sock money away in your HSA while you're working.
Excellent.
So that you can use it in your retirement to help some of these costs. Maybe you invest in trying to stay healthy.
Well,
that's
a great investment in my mind.
Some of the activities that will foster a healthier lifestyle or that kind of thing could also be relevant. I don't know. Those were just a couple of things.
One final thing on healthcare, the article touches on this, and I mean, we didn't say it probably because it's so obvious, but make sure you have the right health insurance. Some people push that, whether it's somebody young and they say, I'm healthy, or going into retirement, I'm just going to have Medicare and, some free supplement that I can get, or really they focus on cost more than quality after they leave their employer. And that can be a stealth loss if you have a serious issue and you have a 20% copay, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not unusual.
It's a great point. It's a great point, because you got to start with the basics, right? Fundamentals, right? Blocking and tackling, right? When it's football.
Exactly. Yep.
But when it comes to financial planning, some basic insurance protection, your whole plan can be disrupted if you don't have the basics covered. And that means homeowners insurance. That means health insurance. We don't like these expenses. Nobody wants to spend it. And health insurance, ridiculously expensive.
Right.
Ridiculously expensive. There's just no getting around it. It's like insane. But if you don't have it, the alternative of, if you end up having to pay for a major surgery, cancer treatment, fill in the blank of like some serious health issue, you'll be devastated financially.
Yeah, we know that in bankruptcy, the number one reason that for personal bankruptcies is a medical event, uninsured medical event. So we feel like it's not going to happen to us, but we know it does happen. So
yeah, good point. All right, good topics. Hey, just one other thing. We talked about inflation. Let me just go back to that. How would you say people can prepare for inflation?
It's all about having a financial plan, and not one on the back of a napkin, about a comprehensive financial plan that calculates in, your future cash flows, not the cash flow on retirement day,
right?
But the cash flow 30 years from now with some projections and some allowances. It will give you a more accurate depiction of whether or not you're ready.
It's a good point. And the way you think about your investments, the way you design your portfolio is going to help to mitigate that risk. Maybe we talk about Social Security decisions a lot. Sometimes that's maybe factors into helping to mitigate the inflationary concerns. All right. What were some of the other of the five big ones that they talked about in this?
There were two others in this article. One was taxes, and I do see that with people who don't appropriately calculate the taxes in retirement, or they just, it's not they forget, they just don't appreciate that when they were working, they had taxes withheld.
Yeah.
And, we see clients and, here's stories of like people taking withdrawals from their retirement savings or taxable brokerage account. And, we talked to them at that time, like, do you need to withhold taxes? And so many people who get in trouble don't contemplate and say, no, I'll deal with that later. Or they put it off, right?
Yeah.
And they say, or I'm going to put that money back, so I don't need it, right? Things like that. And then it kind of snowballs where they use that money and then don't have liquid money. Yeah. So you need to pay.
And they're like, I had such a big tax bill.
Why?
Like, and then they have to take more money out of their retirement plan again for the next year. So
Yep.
they got a big tax bill again, that kind of thing. You can see these kind of things over and over again happening, right?
I had one neighbor probably 2 weeks ago that was complaining about his CPA and said that, he made all the estimated taxes that he told them to make.
Mm-hmm.
So I was drilling down with him a little bit, and to this example exactly, he said, well, I guess I took an extra withdrawal last year and didn't withhold any money on it.
Darn CPA.
Did you call your CPA and tell him this?
Yeah.
He was basing it upon, the previous year. So, it's just pay attention to it, right? You pay quarterlies probably for a reason, but do a calculation when you're paying that quarterly and say, am I on track?
Yeah.
Or sit down with your advisor and say, I feel like I've had a lot of capital gains this year, or I took that extra withdrawal. Do you think I need to increase my quarterly? Talk to somebody about it. Do a calculation as you're doing the quarterly, so you don't get surprised by a big tax bill that you can't pay.
Yeah, good point. I would say we oftentimes talk in our financial planning process about strategy around tax diversification and the tax prioritization, where to draw from,
Absolutely.
when, and that can have virtue, but it can be challenging too. And there's times when people don't want to draw down their taxable accounts first fully.
Right.
We often try to think in terms of sequence, try to use the taxable account money first, IRA type money second, and then the Roth money last, thinking that's going to grow the most and we want it to tax-free, maximum growth potential. But sometimes we got to revisit that because, our tax bracket went down. Maybe we want to prioritize paying some taxes sooner, whether that means to use that money for withdrawal or do a conversion or whatever it might be. But paying attention to these tax considerations is a real planning opportunity. And sometimes let's face it, for all of us, it's frustrating. Nobody likes taxes, right?
Well, that's all the more reason to do it, though. You mentioned that kind of general rule that you hear people say, taxable first, IRAs, Roth.
Yeah.
But it's a general rule, fine, but it's not the right rule
in all circumstances.
And it may be right for you one year, but the next year maybe you should have a whole different strategy because of your current tax situation. So it's where these general rules kind of
So it goes back to making sure you have the right financial planning guidance in this process.
Right.
A good tax advisor, that CPA that someone was complaining about, right? But you got to keep them in the loop, keep them involved, get good guidance in the process between your financial advisor, your tax advisor, and so forth, estate planning, and all the rest of it, and the whole team of people you deal with. So that go ahead.
Speaking of team, the last stealth item is family.
We've talked about this one before. The unexpected expense that inevitably hits a lot of families with expense and unexpectedly. What are common circumstances that lead to this?
Well, so it could be a positive that you want to be generous, or it could be, I hate to use the word negative, but it could be a challenge. So it could, on a positive side, you could have this inspiration to help someone go to college, or someone buy their first home, or someone get married, a nice wedding, or someone, whatever.
A gifting strategy that you want to be gifting to them routinely.
Right.
But you could do too much.
You could do too much.
Because you don't want to give away all your resources before you're done needing them.
Yeah.
There's also circumstances where family members have unexpected divorce or
common one,
health issues or whatever it may be. There can be these things of that sort. And parents so frequently we've talked about this many times, but they want to help. They care about family first, right? We all care about our family.
Of course.
However, there are times when sometimes that can be abused, or you have to give thought to, am I able to do this? I'd like to help, but am I able to do it in a way that doesn't put my own financial security in jeopardy?
Right.
And sometimes you have to show restraint or you risk your own financial security in the process.
Yep. And be careful, even if you make sure that people understand what you're offering to do. Like, never say I'll pay for your wedding.
Yeah.
Because your wedding could
What's
be,
that mean? That could be open-ended. Yeah.
it could be $5,000 or $50,000. Make sure you're, if you're being generous, or if you're helping out a loved one who maybe has a job loss or divorce or whatever the situation, talk to your spouse if you have one, talk to your financial planner, and come up with a figure or a way to help somebody, and articulate it with specificity. That we're helping you for 2 months. We can help you for 2 months. That's what we can afford, or we can contribute $5,000 to the wedding, or whatever it is. And that way the generosity is understood and appreciated, and the person receiving it didn't hire a 12-piece band for the wedding.
Yeah.
It doesn't think that mean they have a year off and they can just go the slow path of getting that next job. So
that's a great point. And then similarly, like if you are saying, well, maybe I'll help them. I was meeting with people recently, and various circumstances, they bought a house that they were now having a family member reside in, a condo house. I forget what it was, but the idea. And so, but I'm going to charge you rent, or or that you maybe if you take on the mortgage of their place, that you have a contract, or you need to have. I mean, let's face it, it's very hard to, you're going to go, collect on that and foreclose on someone, so you really have to give detailed thought, but when possible, put it in some like formalized terms so that everybody's on the same page. This is what we're agreeing to. And that having that formality about it makes it less of a, well, mom can afford that or dad can afford that. They won't. A lot of times parents don't tell what they can and can't afford. And it's just assumed that their resources are oftentimes greater than they may even be. So
for sure.
Yeah.
So be specific and, document it. I think that's great advice. And that way the recipient is appreciative of what you're doing and they understand it, and there's no hard feelings later.
Yeah. And I think we've had this theme throughout.
Yeah.
Work with your financial planner to evaluate what can you really do that you can afford, or if it's going to be challenging, how do you navigate? What do I need to do to be able to do what I want to help? It may mean some changes need to occur, and so you can evaluate what's going to be the way to get you to the end result that you most value and want.
Super important, because when you have that financial plan in place, then you can go to the advisor and say, I'm thinking of doing this. Does it affect my longevity, my plan?
How does this work? Yeah.
And then you get, kind of relief that it doesn't, or you get like a point of caution to say, all right, maybe I should do something else, as you indicated.
And sometimes too, you can have the benefit of saying, well, I wanted to, but my financial advisor.
Yeah. Blame us. It's fine.
If it helps, if you have that kind of need for a little buffer, you can be like, I really was hoping to do more, but my financial advisor tells me, that kind of thing.
Nothing wrong with that.
Sometimes it's helpful to have that third party in the mix as in that role.
Absolutely.
But it's ultimately, in reality, money is yours. These decisions are yours.
Sure.
We're here to counsel and guide, but it's ultimately up to you how you handle these issues, but we can try to give you guidance and help in the process. So I guess that's a good place for us to wind down, Jeff. If there's anything that you need, listeners, as you run into your personal challenges of these stealthy issues, maybe it's a good time to update your financial plan, make sure you're addressing all of these issues and have them well thought out. We can be a resource in the process. Don't hesitate to reach out. Until next time, everybody, keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's for financial planning or portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at somethingmorewithchrisboyd.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901. Or send us your questions to amr-info@wealthenhancement.com. You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd Financial Talk Show. Wealth Enhancement Advisory Services and J. Christopher Boyd provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. Wealth Enhancement Group cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.